recorded before, and yeah, it doesn't ask, it just records.
Are you getting, did you get any kind of message? Nah?
No.
Okay. All right, we're recording now. If you do not want to be recorded, please leave. Counting 1, 2, 3. Okay, I assume that it's okay with all of you to be here and to be recording. All right, let's pick up where we're not going to pick up where we left off. We're going to do a little review. And the beginning of the review is always, since we're dealing with the Constitution, we have to define what a republic is. So who wants to give a shot at defining what is a republic? Howard, of course, is muted, so he can't.
He's not muted.
He's muted to me.
Oh, is he? Oh, maybe it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Teresa.
I recall it's an artificial construct made up of a monarchy, a democracy, and the hell if I can remember the third one.
The aristocrats.
Thank you. And the aristocracy, right. And it's, yeah, and so it's very clever, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, all right, that's good. Anybody want to add anything to that? All right, then I will. The three natural forms of government are monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. Each one of them, because they are natural forms of government, are capable of degrading into something that's not so good, because the people that run them, either the king, the aristocrats, or the mob, can start taking into account only their own interests and not the interests of all. And when that happens, then others are getting hurt, and it becomes a bad form, the evil twin brother. So the question was, how do we get some government that is going to be less likely to turn into some monster? So what they came up with, what Aristotle first thought of, and then what the Romans also found out, and what they called res publica, the people's thing, was a form of government that had elements of all three of those in it, and that those three could counterbalance each other and make it so that it'd be less likely that any one of them would take over and become a bad form of government.
Yeah.
So that's what a republic. That's what a republic is. And now we're going to move on to the Constitution itself. So I'm going to share my screen, and my screen is right here. And everyone can see the ever popular Constitution of the United States, a study guide. And we'll get right down to the, right here. In every book I've ever written, it turns out it's really interesting. Different forms of, I have something about different forms of government and what is a republic in every book I've ever written.
That's good.
Just because it's so important. And as I have mentioned before, if 100 years from now or 200 years from now, if I'm remembered for anything, it is I want to be remembered for making it common knowledge and more people understanding what a republic is. So the Constitution starts off with a preamble. Actually, it didn't start off with a preamble. What they did is they wrote the whole Constitution, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, and so on. And then when they got it all done, they looked back at it and they said, well, you know, we need some kind of introduction to this thing. So they put up this, We the People of the United States. What this does is it immediately tells you that this is what in the old days was called a charter, and it's still called a charter today, in which some sovereign is granting powers and abilities to some junior partner. And we, the people, are the ones that are doing the granting, and the Constitution for the United States of America is what is being granted. We are making this government. This government belongs to us. We don't belong to it. And it is a compact amongst the people to do that. Right, Marty?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we go into the articles. And Article 1 has to do with the legislative branch. The interesting thing is that the guts of this thing there's 3 articles: Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. Article 1 deals with the democratic piece of the government. Article 2 deals with the monarchical branch of the government, and Article 3 deals with the aristocratic form of the government. So it fits very nicely into what is a republic. Article 1, Section 1 says that all laws, all legislative power, first of all, it was going to be a nation of laws, not of people. And so Article 1 says first that all laws are made by the Congress, which consists of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. Then Article 1, Section 2 talks about the House of Representatives, what it is, who populates it, what their qualifications have to be, what the kinds of things that they can do. Article 3 talks about the Senate, who populates it, what their qualifications have to be, how they get elected, how they get selected to get put into the Senate, and what special powers the Senate has. And then Articles 4 through 6 deal with housekeeping, setting it up so that having to do with elections and having to do with each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings, and what constitutes a quorum. So you have to have a quorum in order to do business, and in this case, it's a majority of each house. It has to be a quorum to do business. And it is basically it's setting up business so that the legislative branch it's housekeeping. It puts it together. Now the next one is we get into Article 1, Section 7 has to do with how you make a law. In other words, it is now the procedure. We did the housekeeping to set it up, to establish it, to put it there. And now, what is this thing going to do? And what it's going to do, and it talks about how you have to have a bill, and it has to go from one house to the next house, and the president has to sign it, or he can veto it. And if he does veto it, the process that it then goes back through, and all that kind of stuff. All that's very good, but the real guts of what the Constitution is that it was the states or the people were granting to this national government a number of powers that this national government was going to do for us, so that we didn't have to each individually do it ourselves. The national government would take care of certain things for us. And for Article 1, Section 8 names what those things are, very specifically exactly what those things are. The very first part of it, the very first clause of Section 8 says, and this was probably one of the most important things, it was certainly top on their mind, which is why it's number 1, is that they have the power to collect and lay taxes. Under the Articles of Confederation, the national government did not have the power to lay and collect taxes. And the reason why suddenly in 1787, this was becoming a very important point was because in order for us to prosecute the war for independence, we had to borrow a whole bunch of money from France. And we owed France a lot of money, and we did not have any plan on how we were going to be able to pay it back. So, and it was due in 1788. And we knew it was due in 1788. So in 1787, they said, guys, we got to do something. So they said, the very first thing they said is, this Congress, this new national government is going to have the power to lay and collect taxes. And what were those taxes going to be for? They were going to be to pay the debts. That was the first thing it was going to be for, was to pay the debts. And then also to provide for the common defense and the general welfare of the United States. Then they listed out a number of things, specific things that this government was going to be able to do. And it very nicely, nobody ever said this, but as I was reading them way back in 1991 and putting this book together, it struck me that these powers are they are segregated into two groups. And the first group has to do with general welfare. What are the things that the government can do to promote the general welfare? Well, we're going to do things like establish post offices. We're going to be able to borrow money. We're going to regulate commerce. We're going to have uniform rules of naturalization, so we just don't have somebody coming in North Carolina is able to be a citizen, but somebody that's coming in from Massachusetts has a much more difficult time of doing that. Everybody's going to have the same shot no matter where they come in through the United States. Then we have coining money. We have providing for the punishment of counterfeiting. Promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times that here the authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings. In other words, making it possible so that somebody could get the idea for a better mousetrap and be able to build it and make it and not worry that it's going to be stolen from him, so that he can actually thrive with it. And these are all things that help prosperity. They help the general welfare. They help and they're not aimed at any specific group. They help pretty much everybody. So that was the first grouping here, which is the general welfare. And then the second grouping of powers that they had to do with common defense. And this is exactly where we left off last time. So, Marty.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to read this power right here.
Very good. To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water.
All right. So Congress is going to declare war. This obviously has to do with the common defense. Letters of marque and reprisal, we actually touched on in an earlier meeting, but would someone like to refresh our recollection of what letters of marque and reprisal is?
So doesn't it mean that the people who get the letters of marque and reprisal, they can go ahead and fight for the country without having to be part of it or something like that?
Without having to be in like sort of in the armed services of it.
Right.
And they are given a letter of marque, and that letter of marque allows them to do reprisals on enemy shipping. And they were called privateers. And if you did privateer activity, but you didn't have a letter of marque and reprisal, you were not a privateer, you were a pirate. Or as they say in Tampa, a buccaneer.
Buccaneer.
I would point out, if I might, that
Yes.
the United States had no Navy at this
That's
time.
correct.
So this was the only way that the United States could present a naval offense or defense, was have private citizens subcontract, the job.
Right. Yes, that's exactly right. And earlier we talked about Queen Elizabeth fighting off the Spanish Armada, and that it was done mostly by private citizens in their little fishing boats and stuff, going out there and being able to beat the Armada that way, because Britain apparently didn't have a navy big enough to handle that at that time as well.
John?
Yeah.
Can you define the difference between the letters of marque and what that is and the letter of reprisal?
No, I think it's mark and reprisal. I think
It's
it's
a,
all,
it's a one thing, it's not a mark and it's not a letter of reprisal.
I believe it's all one thing,
Okay.
you know. If you find out differently, let me know.
Did you have it defined up above in your definitions there?
I do. Letters of mark and reprisal.
Hmm.
You want to read that one, Marty?
Sure. In 1787, if one country went to war with another, it could issue letters of marque and reprisal to a private citizen, giving him the right to attack the shipping of the enemy. Without such a letter, the privateer would be a pirate, as you said.
Yeah, I think mark and reprisal. I think mark and reprisal is sort of an
Idiom.
An idiom. Yes, I believe that's correct. If anyone would like to check me on that and prove me wrong, I would love to find out.
Go ahead, Howard.
Maybe.
Yeah, we're waiting for you, Howard. That's fine.
Oh.
I'll be checking my email inbox during the week for you, Howard.
I have such a bad reputation. All right. I'll see what I can find out.
All right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Good. Okay. Now it used to be when I was doing local meetings here, either we did some at St. Anne's Church, and we did some at Grange, and we did some at a pub, and we did some here, and we did some there. When somebody raised something like that, and they would say, "What's the difference between that, and is there a difference?" and so on, and it stumped me, I would say, "Why, thank you. If you would like to, next week, why don't you come back and tell us?" And it got to a point where people didn't ask me questions anymore. Which is too bad because, if you want to look that up, that'd be great, Howard.
All right.
And if you don't, that's fine too. All right. So the next one, Teresa, I'm going to ask you to read this one right here.
Okay. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years.
Yeah. So we can raise and support an army, but why do you think, what problem were they trying to solve by putting in this thing about no appropriation of money for longer than 2 years?
They didn't want big, long wars, I would imagine.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Okay.
Just keep everybody out of trouble here. Don't let them get too carried away.
Okay.
If they want to get carried away, they got to start, they got to do it again.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a tremendous fear of a standing army in the early, in the colonial era. You didn't want to, the army was the state militia. You really didn't want to have a federal army that could become a tyranny as used by a tyrant. And then the states would have to go to war to depose the tyrant. And so that was the issue. No standing army.
Well, all right. Well, they knew they were going to have some kind of a standing army.
The standing army for the first
because they
years,
had a standing army from the beginning.
they had a continental army, which was designated by the Continental Congress.
Yeah, right.
There were
exactly
state
right.
militias also that fought, although
Exactly,
not as well as Washington's army.
Howard, you're exactly right. There was a tremendous trepidation regarding standing armies. They didn't want to have them, but they recognized the importance of having to have one in case we get invaded. You're going to have some kind of a standing army, but not for a term longer than 2 years. And I think, what everybody said is true. And I would just add to that I think it was because if the president, who is the commander-in-chief of the army, decides that he's going to start declaring martial law or something like that, his money's going to run out after 2 years. And I think that's what it was more about, was that his money was going to run out after 2 years, and it would stop him from trying to like declare martial law or something like that. If he was doing stuff with the army that Congress didn't like, it could shut it down. I think that's the point of it. That's the power of the purse. Okie doke.
Yep.
A whole lot of
Okay with
signs.
me.
Yeah,
All right.
we're good.
All right. Next one is this one. I think it's Marty's turn again.
No, Howard.
I got skipped. Nobody
No,
lost
is
me,
it Howard's turn?
maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry, Howard.
Are we to declare war?
No.
We're up to where it's marked on the
To
where it's
provide.
marked on the screen.
Well, to provide and maintain a navy.
There you go. Because
We didn't have one.
letters of marque and reprisal will only work for a certain amount of time. Then pretty soon you got to get a navy. That's right. And notice on this, what I thought was really interesting was there's nothing about an appropriation for only 2 years.
That's true.
Yeah, I
Why-
noticed the same thing.
Yeah. Why that? Why not have that also for 2 years?
Do you like to feed one? Would you like to feed one? Okay.
Well, the Navy provides defense against an enemy from overseas.
Yeah.
And the Army provides a defense only along the borders or anything that breaches the seawall or the beach or whatever.
Okay.
So apparently a Navy is necessary to protect commercial interests abroad or approaching our shores.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly true. But also, if you're going to declare martial law, you're going to lock down the population. It's going to be an infantryman with a bayonet. It's not going to be a Navy cruiser in your front yard.
That's right.
Not,
Maybe-
not unless you live next to New York Harbor, I guess.
That's my thought on it. And also there is the 40-year shipbuilding cycle, which is which is that a ship when it's built is good for about 40 years, and you have to then build more ships, and so you have to plan for that, and you have to have Navy yards, and you have to have shipbuilding yards, and you have to be able to plan. It takes a number of years to build a ship, and you can't just say, here's your money for 2 years, the ship is half built, now you have to come back for more money. Seems that way to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next point, this one's going to be Marty.
Yep. To make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces.
Good. So you have, so the commander-in-chief is the commander-in-chief, and he tells them where to go and stuff like that. But they have rules for their own government, and the regulation of them of the land and naval forces. There's the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is not the same justice that civilians have. That's not made by a bunch of generals and stuff. That's made by Congress also. So those are the rules for that. All right, Teresa, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here you go.
Okay. To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions.
Good.
I wish they would do that nowadays.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. We got insurrection going on right now.
Right.
And the governors are not requesting assistance, nor
No.
are they calling up their state militia to put down the rebellion, and they jolly well should and ought to.
Yep.
Oh well.
I know.
And of interest with this is to provide for the calling forth of militia by the national government. The militia is under the governor's
The states.
rule. The governor is the commander in chief of the militia until they are called forth in the service of the United States to either execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, or repel invasions, which means that whatever the mechanism is for that calling forth, it is not being used either by Trump or anybody else to call that forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The House and Senate has to do that, to call them forth, right?
I don't know. See, it says to provide for the calling forth. They can say,
this is Article 1, so it would be the Congress.
no. What they do is they set up the rules for how you call forth.
Oh.
So they can say, you know, given certain circumstances, whatever, the president can call them forth. Or they can say the president can call them forth after he has gotten the permission of the Senate, or whatever. Or he can call them forth only with the permission of the governor, or he can just call them forth anytime he wants. The Congress provides for what's the procedure for calling.
Okay.
Is this the Emergency War Powers Act then?
No, the Emergency War Powers is a little different than that. What emergency powers is that Congress gave the president the power to suppress insurrections, repel invasions, and execute the laws of the United States, and other stuff like that he thought was important to do. And he could just do it. He could just send the army. He could just send the army to Iraq. Boom, if he had to, if he wanted to. Okay, but in that law they say within a specified period of time, short period of time,
like 60 days.
He has to notify Congress that he's done it.
Right.
And then Congress has a short period of time to disapprove it or to cut funding to it or whatever. That's what the War Powers Act is about. It recognizes that that situations can occur in which immediate action is required, and that's what the president is there for, is to do that. But then now by law he has to, in the Emergency Powers Act, he has to do certain things, notify Congress, so on and so forth, and then they have the ability to come back and say no or yes or whatever they want to do about that. And I don't know the minute details of it. I can't give it to you, but that's the basics of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The purpose was to keep the United States from getting involved in an endless war that there was no declaration of war issued by the Congress. So it's to curtail a little bit of that executive commander-in-chief power.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Exactly right. Thank you, Howard.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's worked out well since the early 50s.
Yeah, right.
What's that, David?
I said that's worked out well since the early 50s.
Yes, indeed. Exactly right. So now we have, okay, now this is a big, long one. And whose turn is it now?
Howard.
Howard? Okay, so you start this one, and I'm going to stop you somewhere along the way.
All right, here we go. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia.
Okay, good. So the militia of each state is the creature of that state. However, we're going to make sure that they're all kind of in alignment with each other, so that when they are called up or when they fight, when they have to fight together, it's like one of them's not using muskets and the other one was using AR-15s. You know, it's like they all have the same weaponry and they all have the same disciplining. They all have the same, they're all organized into platoons and companies and whatnot like that, instead of one of them being organized one way and one of them being another, so that they have different cultures and so on. It's kind of to make sure that so that when they are together, they can be more like a unit. So that's to organize, arm, and discipline the militia. And go ahead now.
And for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States.
Good. And so that when they are, just like above, when it's to make the rules for the government and regulation of land and naval forces, that when the militia comes into and is employed in the service of the United States, that also the rules that Congress makes rules about their government as well when they're in the service of the United States. Can you see why that would be a good idea? Or, okay, Marty's saying yes. Teresa's hanging on the phone.
I'm here.
Yeah. David gives.
Wait, are you asking?
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm asking if it makes sense. Thank you, David. I'm asking if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes, it does. Okay.
Okay. And Howard, you good with it so far?
Yeah, it sounds like it's standardizing equipment mainly.
Yeah, standardizing equipment and standardizing so that when you say right face, some of them don't, do one thing and another one does something else. It's they all are pretty much the same, and governing them when they're in the service of the United States. And then we are now at this point right here. Up.
Reserving to the states.
Yeah, go ahead.
Reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress.
Good. So the state itself, first of all, they are the ones that appoint the officers. So the officers are not beholden to the national government. The officers are state officers. And the state also has the authority of training the militia. So one state might say, 2 weeks over the summer you do your training. Another one says every weekend. Another one says, something else. They can do different methods of training, but they all have to be armed and using the arms and disciplines that have been decreed by Congress. So they're going to train the militia. The states are going to train the militia, but according to the discipline prescribed by Congress.
Okay, so the states train them. So is this like the National Guard thing or what? I don't know. What in modern times, what is the state? What is our militia?
Yeah, the Militia Act. This gets a little. This gets kind of. This gets a little messy.
Okay.
Okay. In about 1903, there was
1911
a law called the Militia Act. What's that, Howard?
1911.
1911. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Since you are familiar with that, you go ahead and tell us. No, go ahead and tell us.
If it's called the Militia Act, I'm not sure that's the title of it, but it sort of nationalized the state militias and made them less independent and more dependent upon the federal government. And the government would, the feds would buy their equipment, but it made the states a lot less independent of the federal government. And
So is that the National Guard then, Howard?
yes, the National Guard Act. That's what it was called, the National Guard Act of 1911.
Okay, so that's our militia. That's the militia now.
That is now the militia.
Well, that's
Now there is
that's
also
actually in that law. Just I'll give it back to you in a second, Howard.
okay.
In that law, it specifies two militias. and it specifies the organized militia and the unorganized militia.
That's where I was going to go.
Oh, that is where you were going to go? Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, continue.
Oh, that's all I got.
Oh, okay.
But the unorganized militia is every man.
The unorganized militia is every person between ages, every man between ages of 16 and 40 or whatever the ages are.
Might be 17 and 55, perhaps, maybe,
Oh, thank God.
as I recall.
That's right, and I'll take your 1755 and I'll raise you by an 1822.
Brilliant.
So that's what the National Guard is, and then the National Guard has been being used. See, and this is what it sticks in the craw of a few people, because the National Guard or the militia is to be called forth to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, and repel invasions. There's three purposes. So what are they doing going over to Iraq? Are they executing a law of the Union? No. Are they suppressing an insurrection in Iraq? No. Are they repelling an invasion?
No.
Well, maybe, sort of, but it's kind of a stretch.
Oh.
They just sent him to Portland.
Yeah, well, yeah, and so there are people who say that doing those things, that using them in wars overseas is not constitutional.
To suppress insurrections.
Well, we would need to look at the
Outside the country.
that 1911 Act, but the president
even-
will call
even-
up National Guard units and send them overseas.
Well, if the
And-
national, even if that act says you can call up units and send them overseas, it has to still be to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, or repel invasion. You have to be able to justify it by one of those.
Right.
So, and that's why I said perhaps repelling invasion, because we're over there making sure that they don't end up
Over here.
over here, and so we're repelling the invasion before it happens, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Which
possibly.
is,
Well, the invasion of Iraq, the second invasion of Iraq, I forget, did that have are we at a declared war there or
No.
we
not?
haven't had a declared war
Since World War II.
Since two.
Okay. So can a governor then say, I am not sending our National Guard overseas? It is
And you'll
not
go to
in
court.
the Constitution.
And
Pound
they'll-
sand.
and it'll go to court, and I don't know how it will be decided, because when it goes to court, that's a crapshoot.
Any
Yeah.
law which is repugnant to the Constitution is not valid.
You have to tell our
and-
Supreme Court that.
And you and I are well aware of that. However, they can stretch and take this shower cap and make it fit over the head of an elephant. They've managed to do that more than once.
Yep.
So I'm not, so, you and I agree, David. However, we have to get them to agree also. And in many of my emails and so on, I've talked about, I've talked about legal realism, which is
Yeah.
something that's been raised in the last 100 years or so, and has turned now into critical theory, which is now turning into critical race theory, which
Yep.
has to do with making sure that things are right rather than following the law, which is, we're not going to get into that. But thank you.
So,
Thank you for dinging my bell and making me go into that, David. I appreciate it.
so it's just another form of racism. It's reverse racism.
Actually, critical race theory, I wrote an email about it recently. I may have to redo that one. Okay,
All right.
so that's those. Those are the things that Congress can do
I have a
to
question.
provide for the common defense. Yes.
So it says to provide for calling forth the militia. Now this is national government, so this is Congress. Now, but they can't go into the state like Portland and suppress the insurrection there without the state saying, come on in and do that.
Well,
That's not what that says, though.
no, what it says is to provide for calling forth.
Yeah,
That's all it does. It doesn't say with the permission of the governor, not with the permission
right.
of the governor.
So they
Right.
could, so
It
Trump
depends.
could say, go in and handle that uprising in like Portland and Seattle.
Yeah, it depends on what the law that provides for calling forth the militia, what it says, and I don't know what it says.
Okay.
Well, does not the Constitution say that the Congress shall have the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union?
Right. In other words, they provide
Oh,
for
not
it.
the president.
They don't.
Yes,
They
that's
don't
correct.
do the calling forth. They provide for it. They could by law say only the Congress can call forth the militia, in which case then they're the ones that call it forth. They could by law say the president can do it under any whim that he likes, and then that would be the procedure for calling forth the militia. Or they could say the president can do it, but only if the governor agrees, and that would be the providing for the calling forth.
Okay.
Does it make sense, Howard?
Yes, that's what we have now. The governors of Washington State and Oregon are just not going to lift the finger to stop those vandals.
Well, they're not. Well, see, they're not. They are not using their. They are not using their militia. They're not using their militia, their National Guard, to suppress that insurrection. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that the president or whatever the mechanism is that's for calling
Provided.
forth the militia, whatever that mechanism is, it doesn't mean. I mean, it is possible for whatever that mechanism is to call forth the militias of Idaho and Montana to go into Washington State to suppress the insurrection.
No. The Idaho and Montana would be limited to their state. A militia does not cross a state border.
Okay, Howard. This now is where we
Federal.
disagree, because what you have done now is what we're doing is we're calling forth the militia in the service of the United States. They can serve anywhere in the United States. They can serve any place. They do not have to serve in their state. That's why we have. That's why we had National Guard, or we're allowed to have National Guard from Utah go down to the southern border to protect the border.
With the
That
permission
can
of
be
the
done.
governor of Utah.
I'm sorry?
With the permission of the governor of Utah.
Well, now that depends
No,
on
whatever the provision is.
whatever that provision is. Exactly right. And I'm not sure what that provision is. And if someone would like to look that up and find out what is the law that provides for calling forth the militia, and we can get into that, that would be great.
Would you not think that the militia of Oregon ought to be called up to suppress that insurrection?
Of course, but that's not the point. The point is, can they come from Idaho? And I'm saying, yes, they can.
I would think if the president authorized it.
And that would be, and that would be because he is calling forth the militia of Idaho to execute the laws of the Union or suppress an insurrection. And it doesn't matter where that insurrection is. If that if we have an invasion that's happening, coming up through Louisiana and up the Mississippi, you are going to have militia from Indiana, from Ohio, from all the states north of there, descending on Louisiana to repel that invasion.
Lincoln called up the state militias of the North to invade the South and put down that insurrection, if you will.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. That's right. All right. And I think Howard mentioned at the beginning of it that this is, and if he didn't, I'll mention it now, that this right here was kind of, this whole section right here is kind of the founders' answer to Homeland Security.
Oh, yeah.
This is the way, this is what they expected Homeland Security was going to look like, is it was going to basically be the militias. We're going to handle Homeland Security.
Yes.
And now, okay, we got time. Let's quickly get through these last two. This now has to do with it, because there is, whenever you put something together, you have to give it the ability to defend itself or protect itself or preserve
But
itself.
you still got one paragraph in the above section in the common defense.
This right here, what? No,
Yeah.
this is it right here. This is, we just did this one. We just did that.
Yeah.
Oh, we did?
To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the
No.
militia.
No, we haven't done that yet.
Yeah, we have.
I read it. Howard read it.
Howard read it.
Oh, that's right. That was a long
And I
one.
had to stop him from time to time.
Story
Sorry.
of my life.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, Marty, I don't edit these recordings at all. I just put them up.
I know. It's kind of embarrassing.
All right. All right. So now we have another one. This is going to be another long one. Marty, go ahead, and at some point along the line, I'm going to ask you to stop.
Okay. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square
Good.
as
Okay.
may.
Okay. So at this, there's a couple of interesting things to unpack just from that what you just read there.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a district which is not going to exceed 10 miles square. That's 10 miles on a side. I had to look that up. Because 10 square miles is much smaller than 10 miles square. That's a square with 10 miles on each side,
So 10 miles square is 10 miles one way, 10 miles up, 10 miles over, 10 miles down.
yeah, basically 100 square miles.
Okay.
And in that district, the Congress is going to exercise exclusive legislation. Now, all the other places where it is in the states, and you're collecting taxes and you're running down counterfeiters and you're doing post office work and all that kind of stuff, they're sharing legislation with the state, because the state government says where to put up stop signs and stuff. There's nothing in here about putting up stop signs. So the state is going to put up stop signs. The state is going to prosecute, petty theft and jaywalking and different stuff like that. And the feds don't get involved with that. But in this district, which is 10 miles square, they're going to exercise exclusive jurisdiction in all cases. So they are not sharing jurisdiction with anybody else in this district. It is just for them. What's that, Howard?
So they are foreshadowing the creation of the District of Columbia here.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, because now Marty is going to continue with this.
Okay, may I say something?
Yeah.
10 square miles is 3.33 miles by 3.33 miles. That's 10 square miles.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, but 10 miles square is 100 square miles.
Correct.
Okay. So Marty, my little cursor is sitting there.
I got it.
Yep.
Okay. By session of particular state. What's session?
Session is the giving up of something. We will go back.
Okay, so
we should have.
I'm thinking of secession. Yeah. All right. To give up rights or land.
Okay.
Okay.
To cede.
To cede. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States.
Okay. Good. At that point, so this is defining the how we're going to make the District of Columbia. That's what the District of Columbia is. And we had Virginia and Maryland were the two that gave up some land so that the District of Columbia could be there. And it has this interesting thing that the District of Columbia shall not exceed 10 miles square. Some people have taken this and said that that means that the federal government can't own anything more than 10 miles square, 10 square miles, 10 miles square. In anything. So there, national forests and all that stuff can't be that. However, don't fall for that, because that is specifically dealing with the District of Columbia. That is not, it has to be not exceeding 10 miles square. Or, okay, or maybe I didn't need to go on that rant.
That's okay.
It's all right. They can own Area 51 if they like.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, and continue from there.
And to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings.
Good. So if they need a shipyard, if they need an army fort, if they need a place to store their munitions, they can buy little plots of land and from a state, and then they own that, and in those areas they have exclusive legislation.
And it says nothing about national monuments and forest property.
That's correct. That is correct.
And other needful buildings?
No. That's post office.
Actually, we'll get to
Forts.
we'll get to things like national forests and monuments and stuff like that when we get to Article 4.
Oh, I said courts for the sea, court buildings and stuff.
What's that?
Oh, I was saying in other buildings like courts, courthouses.
Yes, right, exactly
Post
right.
office, yeah.
Yeah, courts, post offices, customs houses, different stuff like that.
Okay.
All right, so they have exclusive legislation over those areas. They have exclusive jurisdiction over those areas. And then finally, Teresa, you want to do this one here?
Sure. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof.
Good. Now, so that means that just because it says, it says, all right, you can erect a building. And so we say, okay, you can erect a building. That's good, because you have needful buildings and stuff like that there, and stuff like that, which is in the clause just above it. But it doesn't say anything about making plans for building buildings. And I can see that someone could come along and say, well, that isn't in the Constitution that you're allowed to make plans for the building. And so we could end up with a big court fight going on over that. However, it is to make all laws which are necessary and proper for carrying into execution all these things. So those things could then say, well, no, it's, if you're going to build a building, you got to make a plan for the building. I mean, that's just necessary and proper. That's the kind of thing. Very interesting, however, is, I sent to you that legal article by Rob Natelson about the coining money. He has a book called The Original Constitution, and it goes through, the original Latin roots and all that kind of stuff of how these things come about. And this phrase, necessary and proper, is a phrase that goes all the way back to Latin, the Latin roots of which described the duties of a servant to the master, where the servant is given the job of, go buy me a pig. Well, in order to go buy me a pig, a necessary and proper part of that is going to be, you got to negotiate the deal, okay? So it would be necessary and proper for that servant to go and negotiate the deal. But it's just part of what it is that his original his original task was. But what it does by this term necessary and proper, it cements in that this government is the servant of the people. That's what that necessary and proper does. Is it says that's what it cements that, makes it all the more true that that's the case. Okay, I think we're about time to end this off.
Okay.
These are the powers that have been granted to Congress to do these things. And this is the powers that Congress has. And next time we'll go into the powers that are forbidden from Congress. How's that sound?
Cool.
Ooh.
Good.
Yeah, Article 1, Section 9. It's a goodie. All right,
Hey,
guys.
wait,
Yeah.
before we end off, there was
Yes.
something I wanted to bring up,
Yes.
which has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
It kind of has to do with that email that you sent out about the hydroxychloroquine.
Okay.
So we stop
Okay.
recording here?
And I couldn't hear that. What did you say?
John, did you want to stop recording here then?
Well, I
What,
still
what
can't
was that? Huh?
understand.
What,
I
what
think
was
Marty
that,
wants to
Marty?
stop recording right now. Is that
Yeah,
right?
if you want to stop, because we're done with this.
Well,
Oh,
yeah, I guess
yeah, you could stop.
since we're going off this,
Stop
I probably
recording.
should do that. Let me stop the share. And
Yeah, okay. Hi, everybody. You're
Okay.
back.
All right, everybody.
Okay.
All right, it's been fun. We'll see you all later.
Good night.
And now I'm going to stop.